Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 1214 of the Juicebox Podcast. Today, I'm going to be speaking with Johnna. She's got like 4 kids. She made them all in like a very short amount of time. She has type 1 diabetes, and I don't know what to tell you this episode's about, but I did really like Johnna. Please don't forget that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan or becoming bold with insulin. When you place your first order for AG1 with my link, you'll get 5 free travel packs and a free year's supply of vitamin D. drinkag1.com/juicebox. Want to help? Of course you do. T1dexchange.org/juicebox. Complete the survey. That's all I need from you. That's all the T1D Exchange needs from you, but they might give you a little bit more back than that. You're going to have to go find out. T1dexchange.org/juicebox. Complete the survey. You need to be a U.S. resident who has type 1 or is the caregiver of someone with type 1. If you're looking for community around type 1 diabetes, check out the Juicebox Podcast private Facebook group, Juicebox Podcast, Type 1 Diabetes. All right, I'm going to have to pull back the fourth wall for a second on these ads. It's come to my attention online that a lot of you think I don't know how to say FOMO, and in the Omnipod ads, I'm mispronouncing it. It's the fear of missing out on Omnipod. More O's. Moo, right? So you don't go FOMO. That sounds weird because it sounds like faux, F-A-U-X, moo. So you go FOMO. I mean, really, like, don't come at me in the messages, okay? This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by Omnipod. Do you have FOMO, fear of missing out on Omnipod? Well, you don't have to. Go to my link, omnipod.com/juicebox. Get rid of that FOMO. So many emails and messages. Scott, I just want to let you know, I think you're mispronouncing FOMO. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by the only implantable sensor rated for long-term wear, up to 6 months, the Eversense CGM. EversenseCGM.com/juicebox.
Hello, my name is Johnna Soler. I live in Chicago. I'm 42 years old and I have 4 kids and I'm a type 1 diabetic.
Johnna, do you know that while your setup for audio was not the longest it's ever been for me with people, it was the most amusing?
I'm very happy to hear that.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Like those little...
The latter part.
Those, what would you call those? They're not kerfuffles, are they? No. Those moments are more frequent than you would think if you're listening to the podcast, that people get on and they're just like, I don't know how the machine works. like that happens sometimes, and it sometimes goes on forever and ever. But yours was different. Most people's go almost exactly the same. This was a first for me. So thank you very much.
The last time they didn't thank me, but I had to say you're welcome, that I remember, was when after the birth of my first, the resident was like, well, now I'm all wet and I have to change my scrubs, which I wanted to do a couple hours ago. So thank you.
It's not really a compliment and you didn't really help.
Exactly.
But you sort of did. That's very nice. My God, what did you do to that poor person?
He was in a certain position.
The wrong one, apparently. Oh my gosh. Well, he learned something too. Okay. So you have type 1 diabetes for how long?
I am at, 2023, 11 years now.
Wow. 23 is 11 years for you. So what were you?
Let's hear your math on this one. I love it.
All right. Hold on a second. 32?
Yeah. So I was diagnosed right before I turned 31.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
So the year I turned 31.
Is there any diabetes in your family?
There is not. And actually in front of me, I got this out yesterday because I knew you would ask that. I'm adopted.
Oh.
And so I have very little background from my family, but I have these papers because it was a private adoption, closed adoption. And I have these papers from 1981 that talk about the medical background of my birth parents. And the only thing on here, it has for my birth father, asthma, I believe in his father. It has for my mother, epilepsy on her with her sister.
You know how useless those things are when you're picking up. They come up to a person who's giving their baby away and they're like, is there any medical trouble in your family? And like the guy was probably like, my grandpa don't breathe good. And, like.
Well, it has like died of a heart attack, died of stroke, but.
Yeah. What does that mean? Did they smoke all the time?
Well, and here's the one that got me. On my dad's side, it says mental retardation, brother in special ed classes for reversal problems. He sees things backwards. And I was like, wow, they called dyslexia mental retardation in 1981.
In 81? And you see things backwards.
Yep. Which I would consider to be dyslexia, which, now is so common.
That's got to be what that meant, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I show him an 8. He sees an 8. Where were you? Do you know what state you were adopted out of? I don't want to make fun of people. Sorry.
No, that's okay. In Illinois.
Oh, is that a place where people don't know things? Or?
Depending on what zip code you're in, I would say yes. And maybe even block.
The 80s, though. I guess you're right. Like, did dyslexia get a designation?
Yeah, dyslexia did not become big until I would say mid to late 90s. And then it kept growing. Yeah, because my undergrad, I did teaching and I started learning more about dyslexia. And like, I didn't even learn until after. So it was in the 2000s, I learned there's like at least 3 different types, if not more.
I have to tell you that you just said that dyslexia didn't become big until is maybe the funniest thing anyone's going to say to me today. So you were like, do you remember when Van Halen really took off? It was that Eruption solo. By the way, my Googling of dyslexia when it began only returned Omari is enthusiastic about vegan cooking and wants to dispel myths about the meat-free food is bland and boring. What? I don't know what the hell that has. Oh, he's a young dyslexic vegan chef. Someone with no conscience named this blog post "Young Dyslexic Vegan Chef" in a vain attempt to get clicks, and I'm insulted by it. That's all.
Well,
this kid's got a lot of juice on the internet. Good for you, Omari. Jeez, he's everywhere. I'm going to hear back like this kid's like incredibly famous. I'm the only one that doesn't know who he is. Anyway, so you have no family background to speak of as far as
correct.
What could be or what could be. Did that make you interested? I mean, you have 1,000 kids. So did that make you interested in like doing like trial net testing for them?
No, it did not. But I don't know if I would want to do that because I've been thinking about that because I'm already like, oh my gosh, you peed a couple times more than usual.
Yeah.
Is this going to continue? I guess if we got negative results, I would be very excited. But if we had more factors, I would be like just waiting even more for the shoe to drop, I think.
Today's podcast is sponsored by the Eversense CGM. Boasting a 6-month sensor, the Eversense CGM offers you these key advantages. Distinct on-body vibe alerts when high or low. A consistent and exceptional accuracy over a 6-month period. And you only need 2 sensors per year. No longer will you have to carry your CGM supplies with you. You won't have to be concerned about your adhesive not lasting, accidentally knocking off a sensor, or wasting a sensor when you have to replace your transmitter. That's right, there's no more weekly or bi-weekly hassles of sensor changes, not with the Eversense CGM. It's implantable, and it's accurate. EversenseCGM.com/juicebox. The Eversense CGM is the first and only long-term CGM. Eversense sits comfortably right under the skin in your upper arm, and it lasts way longer than any other CGM sensor. Never again will you have to worry about your sensor falling off before the end of its life. So if you want an incredibly accurate CGM that can't get knocked off and won't fall off, you're looking for the Eversense CGM. EversenseCGM.com/juicebox. Do you sleep with a bat next to your bed? Is your husband a Viking? How'd you have 4 kids? What's going on? Catholic? Did God get you? What happened?
I wanted a big family and I set out to meet that goal and met it.
Look at you. Look at just setting goals and breaking right through them. It's like the one goal in life that you would think that by the second time you'd start going, yeah, What was I thinking?
No, my oldest was not old enough for me to, well, neither of the two oldest were old enough for me to rethink that.
Did you do them in 2 packages? Are they like kids A and kids
No,
B?
they're just all about 2 years apart.
Oh, wow. You're on a schedule.
Yeah.
Are you done now, or is your husband set to have sex again in 9 months? What's going on?
No, I plan to be done. He actually brought up vasectomy. So we'll see if he follows through on that and reaches that goal. But
I bet you he thought about that while he was very tired at work one day.
yeah, like, oh yeah, right. He sleeps through the night like nothing. At 3, I was like, yeah, what's one more, guys? And now that I have 4, I'm like, if we have a 5th, we have a 5th.
Really?
Hopefully we don't.
Wow.
I will actually work to not have a 5th.
This man you married, is he super handsome or something? What's going on?
We do make beautiful babies.
Oh, good for you. Congratulations. It's nice. I'd be sleeping with a bat next to my bed if I was you. I'd feel the blankets move and I'd be like, no, it's not happening.
I'm hoping that with the more kids, I have at least one that will take care of me as I get older.
Oh, that's a valid plan too. You think one of them could make a couple of bucks, and then you see that one being smart, and that's where you really lay the mommy loves you thing. I get you. Daddy didn't want you. I fought for you. Oh my God. That seems like so many kids to me.
It is a lot of kids. It really is. When I had my 3rd, I was consistently worried that I was going to leave one somewhere.
Yeah, I can't imagine not.
And at this point, I just don't care.
I'm going to say a thing that's none of anybody's business, but I grew up around a lot of baseball and softball as a parent, right? So I know it's a weird thing to say I grew up around, but I became a parent, and my son played baseball since he was honestly just before he was 4 years old. And then Arden began to play softball when she was 5. So I've been around like meeting families that you wouldn't otherwise meet, for a long time. Some of them are just incredibly lovely. And honestly, most of them are, except for a couple of the monsters and these lunatics that think their kids are going to play for the Yankees. Like, other than that, like, everybody's been really cool. This one lady, who is as sweet as could possibly be, had 4 children. The youngest one, whose name I wish the best nickname in the world that I can't share with you because it'll literally say who exactly he is if somebody's listening. But Aww. He was the youngest. And I can remember being at like baseball fields. I don't mean once or twice, where someone says, "Hey, where's blank?" And she'd go, did I bring him? She wasn't joking. She wasn't certain if the child was in her physical presence at the baseball field or at home. This kid we thought he was feral, like the way he just kind of moved around, But if I'm being honest, I think he's the most solid of their 4 kids. And I don't know what that says about them exactly. But they never knew where he was.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I've watched them look for him for 30 minutes only to figure out that he was in another location with a different person. So that I don't think is an unfounded fear for you. I think it becomes a numbers game at some point. But what about the money and feeding them and putting clothes on them? Did you just wrap them in like brown paper bags or?
That's a good idea. No.
You're actually buying them clothing. All right. Well, listen, you're independently wealthy. I didn't understand who I was talking to, but okay, I got it now.
Yeah, I wish. And the thing that works out is the oldest 2 are boy and girl. So the younger 2 can just live in all the clothes they had.
Oh,
so it's like we only have 2 kids. Oh. It's just the food thing.
2 kids that you care about and 2 kids that you just wrap in swaddles whenever I got you. Hey, I want to just say too, strong possibility that we call this episode Young Dyslexic Vegan Chef. Because I could use the clicks,
and then you can see if it has the most clicks.
Yeah, I could use the clicks, too. All right, anyway. Can you imagine if the guy got back to me and he was like, "Hey, man, that's my thing, not yours. Get away from it, all right?" Okay, so you were diagnosed as an adult. How many kids did you have when you were diagnosed?
0.
Wait a minute. You've had 4 children in 11 years?
No. I had 4 children in 6 years.
6 years? Oh, my God. Are you okay?
I don't know.
You got to arrest that thing debatable. Once in a while. Jesus. God. Did it cry at the end? Oh, it did. But you said the OB had to change.
No.
Wait. Didn't you get the OB all wet when you gave birth?
Oh, that was the first resident. So I go to a teaching hospital, so it's completely different doctors every time I deliver.
Oh, okay. I was just making a joke about.
Gotcha. I thought you meant the OB had to change, like somebody else had to see me in general.
Oh, no, God.
Not change their clothes.
Johnna, you ruined that joke. That was set up so perfectly. No, it was so good. You have no idea. Like it made squeamish people upset, but they're still like, I get what he's saying. And everyone else is cracking up, and then you f***ed it up at the end. Okay, it's not your fault.
I'm really sorry.
Don't worry. We'll get past it.
I'll try not to do it again.
No, we're going to get past it. We're just going to let it go. Oh, by the way, before we move on, let's tell people the problem when you were setting up the app is you needed to swipe one way and you were swiping the other way.
Yes, swiping left and right is not my thing. I do not swipe.
I'm like, it says swipe left. You're like, that doesn't work. It doesn't work. But you were moving the thing. Oh, my God. Anyway, let's not get onto that. But sometimes people move their finger one way, but think about them. Anyway, it's not important. All right. So my God.
And I've never been diagnosed as dyslexic. So.
Well, not yet. Oh my God. I didn't even put that together. Where am I on this? I'm giving you crap for not following and I'm not following. It was all set up for me and I let it go. Okay. Wow. So you were diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at 31 years old. How did it come on? Let's talk about the first couple of years. And then I want to hear about making all these babies with diabetes. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by Omnipod 5, and this is for all of you who wrote to me. I'm just going to say FOMU this time instead of FUMU, although I like FUMU, but whatever. A lot of people in my private Facebook group talk about their love for Omnipod 5. Have you ever seen those posts and thought, ooh, I wish I could have that experience with an insulin pump too? If you answered yes, you might be experiencing FOMU, fear of missing out on Omnipod. Symptoms may include, but are not limited to, dreaming about walking past a doorknob without getting your tubing caught, fantasizing about jumping into a swimming pool without disconnecting from your insulin pump first, and wishing you could wear outfits without pockets. There's good news. You don't have to suffer from FOMU any longer. You can see what you're missing by trying Omnipod 5 for yourself. Just visit omnipod.com/juicebox to get started. Is everyone happy now?
Oh my gosh. So this is the other thing. I was like, let me be on this podcast because I haven't heard this story. But then I fully realized I am late. I'm one to come to realizations later on. So I started listening to your podcast maybe a year ago. And I was like, oh, he's got a lot. I haven't. And then more recently, I was like, I haven't heard any diagnostic stories like mine.
Okay.
Let me, get on this. And then I'm like, wait, he's got like over 1,000 podcasts now.
I may not have just heard it already. Yeah. Well, listen, I'm going to tell you, somebody said something to me yesterday I had never heard before. And in 1,200 times recording the podcast, no one's ever swiped the wrong way. And we're absolutely sure that they weren't. So, new stuff happens all the time. Don't worry about it. So what's your story? Tell me.
Okay. So I was in my doctorate level program doing some, not fellowship work, but something like fellowship work. We were doing stuff over the summer. We were preparing to do, or maybe we were doing it. I think we were already doing it. I don't remember the line of events. I just specifically remember it was the year my best friend and I, at the time in graduate school, had created this preschool program. And so we were running that, and we had to get different clothes, or we didn't have to get different clothes. We just decided, like, let's make ourselves wear this like uniform, which was yoga pants and a t-shirt, working with 3-year-olds. So we did that. And I don't know if it was right before or right after, but I had lots of dogs at the time. So no kids, lots of dogs. And I would take them for walks and I'd be like, I'm so out of breath. And even I would walk across the street to this like dog park lot thing. Just an empty lot, not a true dog park, and let them run around. And just walking across the street, I was like, I'm so out of breath. What's going on? And then I started being thirsty and going to the bathroom a lot. Nothing registered, nothing clicked for me. And this was going on for a few weeks. I'm like, let me try drinking some different things. Let me try, I don't know why, but I remember eating licorice, like red Twizzlers.
Yeah.
I don't know why, and looking back, I'm like, oh, I was drinking orange juice and Twizzlers. That really helped. So I'm drinking water, going to the bathroom, like to the point where I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to pee my pants. I did once. And then a couple times I was like, I think I'm going to pass out. Well, before that, I was also teaching online. So doing graduate coursework. So I had to look at the screen and grade papers and things like that. And then one night I was looking at the TV screen and I'm like, the TV screen looks a little blurry. And then the next day I get online to do my course and I can't read it at all. I'm like, I cannot read. I have to go to the eye doctor. We have I thought eye problems were gradual. I don't have any glasses, no contacts, no vision problems in 30 years. I'm like, here it is. So I go to a lens crafters.
I don't know why that made me laugh. Sorry.
I know, right? Go to a lens crafters. The doctor walks in and examines my eyes and he's like, here's your prescription. I also remember afterwards reading all the things on the wall. One of them in particular was about how diabetes affects the eyes. He gives me a prescription for glasses. I go home with them. The next day, I don't need the glasses. My vision is back to normal.
Oh.
And yeah.
You're like, oh, those are those self-healing glasses. They're fantastic.
So my vision keeps changing. And really soon after, I'm to the point where I'm like, I'm going to pass out. And my husband's like, I'm taking you to the hospital. I don't think you look great. And at the time we were not married. We did not live together, but he lived in the same building I did. And I'm just like, okay. So we go to the ER it's like late at night, but we're in Chicago. And at the time I didn't have health insurance. So I go to Cook County, sitting in the emergency room for hours. I think it's like 5 hours and probably like 1 or 2 in the morning.
Well, you couldn't see the clock. How do you know how long it was?
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know if it was before they sent me to the waiting room or I had to wait this long too. But I get to like the lady where she's like getting my info and stuff. And she pricks my finger. And as I was thinking about this to tell you, I don't know if she was telling me, like diagnosing me you're diabetic or
asking,
like how long you've been diabetic. Right. And so I think my blood sugar was somewhere around 800.
Jeez.
So that's, I learned in the emergency room and they're like, we're going to put you in a bay and get your blood sugar down. And then you can come back and meet with the diabetes team on whatever, next week, whenever.
It's fascinating. When we went to the little kiosk at the emergency room where we took Arden, I remember that we created that confusion unknowingly by saying our daughter has diabetes. And what we meant to say was we just figured out that our daughter has diabetes and we're bringing her here. And there was like this moment of like pause. I remember pause and confusion while the person behind the things so what about diabetes? And we were like, oh, no, wait a minute. And then like we just figured, I have a couple of questions. The first one, I don't want to sound disrespectful, but it's probably going to be.
That's okay. I'm not easily offended.
We'll find out. What the hell did that story have to do with you wearing yoga pants?
Oh, because I had lost like over 20 pounds. And so the size of yoga pants was drastically different than what I like would have gone to buy. Like if I would have said, hey, go get me like this size yoga pants, that's not what I needed. I needed like 2 sizes smaller. And it didn't dawn on me I'd lost all this weight.
Did I not hear you say that? Or were you setting up to say that and then never said it?
I don't think I ever said it.
Yeah, I was like baffled. So I literally, I was like, the yoga pants have to be key important to this episode. By the way, when I say key important, I'm making fun of Paula Abdul on the first season of American Idol. Anybody old enough to know that? Enjoy your laugh right now. But I thought this must be incredibly important. Like she's telling me like exactly what she was wearing. And then it never came back up again. And I was like, I was upset. But my other thing is, I think you're the first adult who's admitted to peeing themselves before diagnosis. Yeah. So you were worried you wouldn't do anything new. No, but not then you hadn't. You hadn't 4 kids by then.
True. True.
Don't try to I saw what you just did there. Don't try to blame that.
Well, no, I'm like at this point, anything goes for me.
Yeah. Also, I might just call this episode Busy Decade. So Seriously.
Oh, and awful. Like the first 5 years of my 30s, my early 30s were like the worst in my life.
Because of this diabetes diagnosis or other things?
So it started with that, and then I lost both my parents.
Oh my God. Way to bring down the podcast. Okay, how did that happen? How do you lose both your parents in a short amount of time?
So my dad had heart problems in general. He died of a heart attack unexpectedly, but expectedly. Like we expected him to have a heart attack at some point, just not as when he did. And then 3 months later, my mom died of a heart attack, and they actually called it of a broken heart because she literally had the syndrome where her heart gives out because she misses her husband.
How old was she?
She was born in 53 and died in
63, 73,
17.
93, 2003. She's 60 something, right?
Yeah.
I want to say something right now. This is not
64.
I know we're only one generation removed from your parents. I better not fucking die in my 60s. I better not. Like, I will be so, God, I'll be pissed. Like, I've been through so much and I have fought so fucking hard and I'm almost there. Yep. And I swear to God, if I die in my 60s, I'm going to be so, I hope if I die in my 60s, it happens so fast that I don't have a moment to go, you have to be kidding me. Like, I just, please either let me live longer or a bus that I don't see, one or the other. Oh my God. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. I was also confused by the statement. We knew my dad was going to have a heart attack. Isn't that something we could have gotten ahead of if we knew was happening?
No, like we tried. It was just whatever the issues were with his heart. Like I don't know if he actually got diagnosed with congestive heart failure, but his heart was going to give out and there wasn't anything they could do.
Was he a smoker? And
he, like with his age and everything else, he was in Vietnam.
Oh.
He smoked for so long. I don't think he would have ever made it to a donor list if that was even possible.
Mm-hmm. Was he ever near the spraying in Vietnam?
I don't know.
Did you ever talk to these people, your parents?
I don't know. My dad would not talk about anything related to Vietnam.
Oh, no kidding. Yeah.
Yeah. But I will tell you, he definitely had plenty of monologues in his drunkenness as I grew up. So I did get a lot of information from him, just not about his time in Vietnam.
PTSD?
Oh, yeah. I'm sure.
The drinking was prevalent?
Yeah, at least maybe just trauma. I don't know if actual PTSD, possibly. I don't diagnose it, so don't know all the criteria.
The VA recognizes ischemic heart disease as being associated with exposure to Agent Orange. So.
Yeah,
that maybe isn't crazy. My gosh, but your mom, how long were they together?
They had celebrated their 25th anniversary. So they were married in 1974. I think they got together maybe a couple years before that.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
So 70, 80, 90, 2000. So 30 years.
Yeah. I mean, I was born in 1971 and.
Well, they had to be 30 years because my brother and I were both in our 30s.
Is your brother adopted?
So almost 40 years. Yes, he is. His story is crazy. I'll try to make this short because I extend stories longer than I need to.
No, just make sure you tell me what he was wearing and then never tell me why it's important. That'll be very...
Can do that. Although now he's got this trench coat. I think he finally got rid of it, maybe.
Wait, but your brother's a flasher?
No, it maybe, but he won't tell us about it. So my aunt and uncle lived 3 hours away. My uncle worked as a manager at a grocery store, and one of the baggers said his girlfriend was pregnant. They didn't want to raise the kid because they didn't think they could give it a good life. And my uncle, as the manager, was like, I actually know people who are looking to adopt. And they worked it out. And that's how my parents got my brother.
Wow. Ironically, if the bagger would have bagged it, he wouldn't have gotten somebody pregnant.
Exactly.
Thank you. I'm on a bad joke roll today. Everyone enjoy it. By the way, when you told me that the grocery store was 3 hours away, I thought this better be pertinent to the conversation. And it wasn't. So.
No.
Johnna, have you ever heard me tell the story about my uncle telling stories?
No. Do I want to?
He would ruminate.
If it's as bad as my telling stories, I don't want to.
No, he would ruminate for minutes. So first of all, he owned a business. So he would capture us. He's dead now, so I can do this without problems. He would capture us like during our break times. And you couldn't do anything. He was the boss. You know what I mean? So everybody was like, oh, here he comes. Hi. You know, but everybody was really like, please leave me it's my 15 minutes. Like, leave me alone. But he'd come over, he'd hold court. Wasn't as good at it as he thought he was. And would go into like telling a story about going, you know, for a ride. And the point of the story was where they ended up. But somehow would spend so much time on the ride and get caught up in what year the truck was that they were driving in. And he couldn't quite remember. He'd go back and forth. And you get to the end and it had nothing to do with the truck. It had nothing to do with what year the truck was. And the voice in my head would sit there going, oh my God. Why did we just spend 10 minutes on what year that truck was? I want to know. And there was never a reason. And you're making me feel that way.
I'm terribly sorry.
Do you do this all the time, or is this just since you gave away so much of your body to developing 4 human beings inside of it?
No, I was labeled the queen of pointless stories in high school.
Oh, and queen of pointless stories is definitely the title of your episode. Congratulations. Let's keep going. So this is an affliction you have.
Apparently.
How many people do you think do this? I wonder. Is this a thing?
I'm not sure. You would know better than me. You talk to more people with stories.
I'm going to start keeping a checklist next to my desk here. I am so purposeful when I speak, even though it doesn't sound like I am, because I do this like sing-songy back and forth, like Pulp Fiction timeline talking. But I don't waste words. I'm setting stuff up or getting ready or thinking about stuff all the time. But yeah, I don't know. I love you. This is great. Let me ask you another story. I want to hear more. God, I want to hear more pointless stories. Let's go. So when you're diagnosed back then, what kind of technology do you get?
I was doing vials of insulin and needles.
Vials and okay.
I had no technology. Well, actually, they diagnosed me as type 2. So I got pills. And then when I think I went in for a follow-up within like a week because they wanted to see how I was doing. And the nurse was like, we think you might be type 1. The doctor wants to do a blood culture, a urine culture to check for whatever enzyme in your liver or something.
Okay.
And they're like, yep, you're type 1. So you're going to need insulin. And then it was the needles. And then I did the pens. And then I actually got a job in insurance and switched hospitals and doctors. And then I went to a pump in 2015.
John, are you purposely trying to only use words that are important to the story right now? Because you just slowed. Because you slowed down when you were talking. I was like, oh, I got in her head. I don't mean to do that. I'm sorry.
No, I was trying to think of.
Oh, you're thinking of times.
The year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I went to the pump in 2015. Did not do a Dexcom. And then I've been trying to remember. I'm like, did my doctor suggest this? And I refused. Like, what happened? Because in a lot of your episodes, you guys talk about, the fear being instilled in people. Mm-hmm. And I do not remember, and maybe this is just how I take things, but never once was I ever scared that I was going to die of giving myself too much insulin. And I remember them asking me every appointment, do you have somebody that sleeps next to you? Do you live with somebody? And I'm like, why? Why does that matter?
Right.
And they would tell me because, at night you could go low and this could happen. But I was never feared. I never feared that I would die.
So you're with your husband, but not married to him at that point. Like, how did you think of it? Did you think were you living together?
When I was diagnosed, we were not living together. And then we started living together maybe a year later.
You guys, by the way, are either really, really in love or incredibly sexually compatible. I wish I knew which one it was. Am I right?
Maybe both at some points. I don't know if the incredibly in love continues every day.
No. After a couple of years, don't ruin it for the young people, Johnna. Okay. You'll feel like this forever. Don't worry. You'll never walk into a room and go, oh, right there. God damn it. All right. No. I mean, like you guys waited into your 30s to get married.
Well, we didn't meet each other until we were almost 30.
Is that because you were chasing the perfect person or a career?
Both.
Okay. And then I'm trying to say something without saying it. I shouldn't do that. But an adult who waited that long to get married, who still marries a person who's diagnosed with a chronic illness, I figure either really loved you or really loved having, you know what I mean? like I'm trying to think.
Well,
because
of course, he really loved me and loves any interaction with me.
I would imagine. I just keep thinking you must look like a supermodel as we're talking. And not because people can't love I want to be clear. I don't think people can't love people with chronic illnesses. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that this specific mixture of variables, waited a long time, older, more mature, maybe more likely to do the math on what this might cost, like financially, like there's a lot of reasons why someone might have backed away, but they didn't, which I feel like means you were with a really good match. And I'm just trying to figure out what that was. So
yeah, I think it's lack of thinking things through on his part.
I see. The two of you aren't paying attention.
Yes.
Gotcha. I gotcha. He's like, no, this will be
Hence
fine.
the 4 kids.
So then did he never understand the seriousness of the type 1 in the beginning?
It's hard. It's really hard for me to say. I think he does, but it's just kind of like, it is what it is. I think we have a similar attitude and, this is serious, but we're going to deal with it.
All right. So your personalities match up well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you never thought of anything of it, no matter how many times you're like, are you sleeping next to somebody? Are you going to be safe? That kind of stuff. You didn't make the leap to wonder why they're asking me if I own a handgun, basically.
Well, I mean, they mentioned that, and it wasn't immediately in the context of if you give yourself too much insulin, you could die, especially during the day. Mm-hmm. But I just never, I think it was one of those things like, well, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
I think it was a denial thing.
Okay. Isn't it interesting too? You kind of cruised over it for a second, but I wanted to go back to it. You said it's maybe in my personality that I wasn't like scared by it. That's one of the things I wonder about constantly is people's different reactions to the same information. Like how can you say something to one person and it scar them forever? And another person's just like, wait, it might kill me. All right, I'll be careful. And then they just keep going. Like, that's fascinating to me, Well, I definitely,
when they told me they wanted to check that I was type 1, not type 2, that definitely made me go full blown tears crying in the doctor's office because I was like, what? That means I'm going to lose my arm or my eyesight or, I'm going to be amputated. And, if it's type 2, I can do better and this and that and get rid of it. And they're like, no. Like, and so then I learned more about everything because I knew very little about diabetes.
Yeah. Are you the kind of person that watches a show called Chicago Med by any chance?
I used to. Mm-hmm.
Does anyone want to give me a minute right now I don't know, you can't send me an award through the internet, but I heard your reaction to that information and was able to surmise that you would watch Chicago Med. Everyone just wonder how that happened forever. I'm not going to tell you where my brain got that information from. Also, maybe we call this one bad jokes and pointless stories. I'm still workshopping.
You have a lot to consider.
I'm workshopping that still. Oh my God. Okay. So when do you figure out type 1? How long does it take you to think, I know what this is. I know what I'm doing. All these things I wondered in the beginning, some of them were valuable. Some of them weren't. How long does it take you to get comfortable with it?
I think it ebbed and flowed right before I started having kids. Mm-hmm. And it's gotten progressively better since I started listening to your podcast.
And how long ago has that been?
A year ago, around there.
You've been dumb lucking your way through this for a decade?
Yep. Well, and let me tell you, I found your podcast because I was listening to a podcast, the Vagina Blog podcast, and you were on that.
I was.
And then I started listening to your podcast.
Oh, you must have really liked me if you liked me on that podcast. Because I was very silly on that podcast.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
I have to ask you something. You're already listening to a podcast called the Vagina Blog Podcast. When they bring on a male, not a doctor, do you think, why is this happening?
No. Well, for me, I think it's perspective, right? So I'm a type 1 diabetic, and that's why you were on there, is to talk about type 1 diabetes and the menstrual cycle with your daughter.
Yeah, you must have been the only person who wasn't wondering, why am I listening to this? Don't you think, though? Like,
probably.
Yeah. Other ladies were probably like, what's going on here? This is stupid. I don't even know. This guy, like, he don't know anything about our vaginas. I just knew about hormones. And
Yep.
so you found me on that podcast and then came to this. And now this is going to sound like I'm fishing for a compliment. I am not. I'm asking the question because you literally lived 10 years with diabetes randomly. And now it seems like you have it. Like, what's your situation now versus a few years from now ago?
I would say when I started my A1C, I was able to look back at my charts. So 2013, I think my A1C was around 8. And then I got the pump in 2015. It still stayed around 8. It might have come down a couple tenths of a point. And then it really came down when I started trying to conceive in 2017.
Okay.
And since then, it's been, I would say, no higher than 6'1", 6'3".
Good for you.
And sorry, there's my 6-week-old.
Wait, that kid's 6 weeks old?
Yes.
You're fantastic,
and so
Johnna.
I think with one of my pregnancies, my A1C was 4.9.
Johnna, I love you. I just want to say that out loud right now. Are you going to breastfeed that baby while we're making this podcast, or what's going on here? Did you give that up a while ago?
He won't be ready to eat for at least another half hour.
Oh, no one's ever breastfed on the podcast, Johnna. I'm just saying.
But that you know of.
Well, I would hope if they were a good podcast guest, they would say, hey, by the way, I'm breastfeeding, so that I could say stupid stuff about it and we could have fun. So, wow, I didn't realize that your youngest was that young.
Yeah.
Oh, you are like a bag of surprises. Okay, hold on a second. First of all, I want to commiserate with you and everybody else that this has ever happened to. How upsetting is it to go from injections to a pump and it doesn't move your A1C?
So at the time, I was not even aware or caring about what my A1C was. I was aware of it. I just didn't care.
Why?
And like not because I was like
live fast, die young,
non-compliant.
Yeah.
I had no reason to, like, my doctors would just say, like, oh, you're doing great, blah, blah, blah. They weren't like honing it, like, you need to bring your A1C down. You need to bring these numbers down.
Johnna, you are an employed mother of 3 living in the United States of America with an 8-something A1C, and no one was giving you any direction about that?
Nope.
I hope everyone's embarrassed. Okay. So, and you had children with higher A1Cs?
No, by the time I started having children, I had brought it down to 6.
Okay. And that happened because the doctor said you have to have a lower A1C if you're going to be pregnant?
So the focus has never, and still is not, on my A1C. Like, they take my A1C every 3 months, but it's never, like, I have to ask what my A1C was for them to tell me.
You live in a
forest? What was my A1C again?
Seriously, what do you live in the forest? What's going on?
Don't know. But it was so conception, I read a few books and the doctors were like, we want your fasting blood sugar to be below 90 and your postprandials to be, less than 120. And so I worked really hard to do that.
Oh, they gave you a guideline.
Brought my A1C down.
Okay. So they gave you did they tell you why?
To decrease birth defects, risk factors.
That's it. That's all somebody had to say to you was. And so why were you able to so effortlessly adjust from 8.5 to 6?
I was just paying attention to what I ate, I think, better.
That's it. It was around food, not even around insulin?
Yeah, definitely around the food.
What were you eating? I don't mean it the way it sounds.
I have no idea.
Like, what was your diet like?
I do not remember. The only thing I remember is I ate a lot more spinach with my first, and probably like portioned things out better. But I don't know that I really changed like what I was consuming.
Johnna, you're up for a party. I can tell.
Well, but since, I've, as I've had the kids, I'm like, well, let me just eat whatever. And now it's more about the insulin and controlling things.
Okay. Are you in my Facebook group?
No.
Oh my God. I'm very upset by that. I definitely wanted to see you. I wanted to go find out who exactly I'm talking to right now. That's fine.
If I ever go back onto Facebook, I will join.
44,000 members, 120 new posts a day about diabetes. What would you do with that? Absolutely free, by the way.
I would never look at it because I have 4 kids and I can only listen to podcasts.
Yeah, no, I don't. I mean, quite obviously, you're doing 2 things with your life, and neither of them involve your phone. Well, maybe one of them does. Who knows? I don't know what you're doing over there. So, you did not answer me if your husband is incredibly handsome.
I did not answer you.
You're still not going to? Oh, you know what? Don't answer me, Johnna. Now I'm dying. It'll fuel my entire day wondering if he's just really handsome and you didn't want to say anything, or if you don't want him to hear that you don't think he's handsome. Let's leave it there. That's where I want to live. There's no way my wife thinks of me as handsome, right? Like literally 27 years we've been married. No, I look the best I've ever looked right now, by the way, I think.
I'm sure she thinks you're handsome.
No. I think she's just happy that the kids look the same. I think that's why I got to stay, actually, because I think she wanted another kid and she didn't want them to look oddly different. That was it. There was some time in there when I was younger. I'm sure she was just like, I'll let this guy hang out a little longer so the kids are the same. Like, that's for sure what she was doing.
Oh, my goodness.
Now she's just like, it's getting pretty successful with that podcast. Maybe I'll see what he can buy me when I retire. Maybe that's what she's thinking now. Don't you think? Probably. Do you think young people are like, wait, what's happening? What's going to happen to me? Oh, that's probably just them. Right? Yeah.
I hope she's thinking that.
Yeah. Oh, randomly. It's probably just Johnna and Scott who have this experience. My experience will be different. Yeah. Your whole life's going to be an Instagram reel. Don't worry.
Yes, exactly. Right. Of course.
Suckers. Okay.
Your life will be whatever you make it.
Watch me prove the opposite point, though. Johnna, would you trade your husband for anything?
A pancreas?
I was going to say such a long pause. That didn't go the way I expected. I thought you were doing math. I thought you were going like maybe $400,000.
Nope.
Oh my God.
No, I would not.
Of course not. But it doesn't make any of the other stuff untrue, just so everyone listening is focused on what I'm trying to get at. It's going to be a show, but not so much that you'd want to trade it for something else, which doesn't make any sense, but you'll figure out why later.
Yep. Yeah. And you'll understand why, after 10, 20 years.
Yeah, no, 100%. And here's why, in a nutshell. You bought so much stuff. How are you going to move it all out of here?
That too. Well, yeah, unless you want to be the one to move. Right?
Oh my God. If you can't afford it. By the way, I think that famous people divorce more frequently because they can. But that's a really sad thing to say, isn't it? I think
I 100% agree with that.
Yeah. Because they don't like when T Swizzle moved into the Kelsey boys' house in Kansas City or wherever the hell that just happened. My wife's like, God, that was fast. I was like, she doesn't have to move the stuff. The cost of moving it is meaningless to her. She just said out loud, take some of my stuff to Kelsey's house. I'm going to live there. And if it goes wrong, she'll just say out loud, hey, everybody, go get my stuff out of that house and bring it back to here. Like, she doesn't have any, speed bumps at all around that. And I think that allows people to follow their knee-jerk reactions instead of actually sitting around and saying well, let me be thoughtful about this relationship. She doesn't have to be. I mean, God bless her and all, but you know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah.
He didn't think I'd say anything thoughtful while we were recording, but there it was. By the way, I got a haircut yesterday and the headset feels so much different on my head. It's freaking me out, but I'm okay.
It's the little things in life.
I had a moment yesterday. I walked into the person who cuts my hair. I'm going to just tell you, I do have my hair cut in a salon, but I have beautiful hair. So you should all know that that's why. I don't have a guy's, you can't just hit me with some scissors and everything's okay. I have wavy, curly hair. I need a lady to.
You have beautiful hair. You're not balding, but you host a podcast where nobody can see it.
So it doesn't matter. Meanwhile, yesterday she's running her hands.
One thing you can brag about.
Oh yeah, no, and I have nice broad shoulders too. And again, you don't get to see that either. But she's going through my hair. She goes, my God. She goes, you have all your color. She's like, you still have so much curl. And you're so lucky. She's like, never complain about this. And I was like, I won't complain about it. She goes, okay.
Does she want to scalp you and pay you for it?
I don't know what she was thinking. I think she was going to eat me or lock me in a basement hole or something. But I was like, she's lovely, by the way. She cut my hair for years. I sat down. She goes, "What are we doing today?" After she told me like how lucky I was like, "I hate my hair. We have to get rid of it."
Oh my God.
So what's wrong? I said, "Look how big my head is." So I do wear a bigger hat, like a 7 and I don't know, like 7/8, maybe, like a bigger hat, right?
Okay.
And my head is bigger than some people's heads. I hated saying that out loud because I think everybody who listens but hates me secretly is like, "Oh yeah, we know you have a big head." Like, but that's fine. Like, let's get past. I'm talking about physically, my head's a little bigger than it should be. And now that I'm skinny, it's more noticeable. And when my hair gets all fluffy and curly, I walked in, I was like, "Look at how big my goddamn head is." And she's like, "I don't know what you're talking about." I was like, "Look at it." And she's like looking, and I think she thought I was kidding. I'm like, "I'm not kidding. My head is huge." I turn and give her my profile, and I'm like, "Look from the tip of my chin to the top of the back of my head. That's too long." And she's like, "What are we talking about?" And then she looked for a minute and she goes, "Oh, I see what you're saying." And I was like, right. And then she just like goes into her bag and she goes, "Can I go really tight on the back and the sides?" And I was like, "I honestly don't care what you do." I was like, I woke up this morning, I was so irritated with how my hair looked. And so like I made a last minute decision yesterday. I ran to her and I was like, do this. I didn't even have an idea. I was like, just change my haircut. So anyway, my head is
You
huge.
now love your haircut?
And my head looks more normal. So my point is I'm vexed. I've got beautiful hair. It's gorgeous. I don't want to lie to you. It's absolutely fantastic. When it gets too long, I look like a dry Q-tip that got stuck in your ear. Does that make sense? Is that a visual everyone understands?
Oh, goodness.
All right. So anyway, my head is too big. And now I have to keep my hair short because I lost weight. I don't know why I told you that.
I don't know. Better keeping your hair short than gaining the weight back.
Oh, yeah. Oh, listen, here's what I've learned. Nothing tastes as good as skinning feels. That's a real thing. Yeah. I told this story in a Wegovy diary. What would be like 6 months ago now. It actually made me cry. I'm going to tell you, I literally like sitting by myself, recording a 5-minute diary entry. I unexpectedly started crying. And that was really crazy. I don't feel like I'm going to cry now, and
you felt so good after, didn't you?
Oh my God, it made my whole day better, actually.
Yep.
I've had a lot of stress about work recently, which I know sounds crazy because I make a podcast, but I have. And so we went out this past weekend, Friday night. I think we were just going to go on like a little shopping jaunt. My daughter actually likes shopping for clothes and not even buying them. She just likes looking at clothing. And so I was like, "I'll go with you. Like, I've had a long day. I need to get out of here." So my wife and myself and my daughter, we just went to a mall. We were walking around and I said, "I need some new shirts." And Arden's like, "Well, let's go get you clothes then." We went into a store and we started shopping, and I've probably never shared on the podcast, but I hate clothes shopping. And it's because I grew up like a fat kid, and it brings back so many terrible memories. I hate the way I look in clothes. I don't like looking in the mirror about it. Like a lot of like those feelings that people have, they probably don't tell other people about, but I have them. Like my mom bought me jeans at Sears that had elastic waistbands. So that's a tough one. And like that kind of stuff. But I looked good in the clothing and in colors and patterns I would never have put on. And I was just so like happy. I've never once enjoyed shopping for clothing. And I had such a good time. And I was so pleased when I left and all that. And anyway, I start telling this story in the Wegovy diary, and it hits me of how horrible I was to my mom while we were clothes shopping all the time. And I started thinking, I wish my mom was alive so I could apologize to her about this and explain it to her. And then she's not. And then I started crying. And I was like, oh my God, this is a diary about my weight loss. Like, how did this happen? Anyway, I don't know what the hell we're talking about anymore. You got a pump and you got a CGM. Making the babies brought your A1C down. But what do you mean? Like, you got your A1C down to make the kids, but so you had 3 babies without me and 1 baby with me? Is that right?
Yes.
What was the difference?
And the A1C or?
In your experience.
Why?
Your experience having a baby pre and post podcast listener.
It's hard to say because I think there's more factors. So I use a tandem pump, which has the Control IQ technology, and it's not recommended for use in pregnant mothers. or pregnant women. So with my third, I had it turned off. So it was just whatever settings I had, that's where I was.
Running manually.
And
okay.
Most likely, if I remember correctly, I probably adjusted what I was eating, or we just adjusted my settings based on what I was eating. So when I'm pregnant, I message my doctors weekly and I'm like, here's my numbers. Tell me what settings to change. And they always say, if this keeps happening, change it yourself. And then with this one, I had so it's always the doctor and then the nurse practitioner. Mm-hmm. And so it was a new nurse practitioner because my previous one, who was amazing, our first child, we each had our first kid. They have the same birth date. And she had 3 kids. Once she had her third, she stopped practicing. And I was so sad. And so all of our babies were born about the same time. So in getting pregnant with my fourth, I had a new nurse practitioner that was following up with me in addition to the doctor. And she was not as aggressive as the previous one.
Okay.
So I started making more adjustments on my own and less paying attention to what I ate. I'm just like, I'm going to make these adjustments. But I will say also, and the adjustments came also due to listening to your podcast.
Okay. So I gave you the courage to make adjustments to your settings. Is that it?
A lot more frequently than I was prior. Mm-hmm.
And you were focused on it because you knew it was important for the baby.
Yes, for sure.
Wow. You're a bright person. This is going to sound wrong. I'm so stunned that it took all those years for you to and for those confluence of things to come together for you to pay attention to it. Like now that you've given birth to what I'm going to assume is your last baby, but God knows. Are you going to keep your A1C in the 6s, do you think?
I would hope so. Yeah, that's my goal.
What would stop you?
Some other giant health thing. Well, I guess if it were me personally and it was a health thing, I would then make sure my diabetes was kept in check and a low A1C to not affect that other health thing. But let's say one of my kids develops diabetes.
So something that took your attention away.
And I'm just like, what? But then maybe it would be easier for me to keep mine because then I'd be so focused on what they were eating to keep their A1C and stuff. But management for myself. Unfortunately, I don't follow the airplane rules to put the mask on yourself before you put it on others.
Yeah, I don't think anybody does that. That's just the thing we say because it sounds. By the way, most of advice in the world is centered around things that we all really know but don't do, and then we hear somebody else tell us, and we think, "Oh, they must do it. I can do it too." And I think that the only difference between a lot of people just talking crap and trying to get clicks and downloads and this podcast is I'm actually telling you what we do and those things actually work. And so you know what I mean? If you're a podcast listener, you know what I mean? It's easy to turn get up every morning at 5:00 and run 20 miles and you'll look like me. Well, yeah. Okay. Thanks for the input. I didn't know that being an ultra marathoner would make me in shape, but you've crystallized it for me with your explanation. There's a lot of self-help out there that doesn't actually help anybody. It preys on how you feel and what you know is wrong with what you're doing, and you listen to it because you feel like, if I listen to this, if I read this, I'll do it. But that's not how it works. And I'm really fascinated and thrilled, by the way, that you're so honest, that you're not 100% sure if your A1C will stay in the 6s. And you don't know why, other than to say that this is your personality, it's how you deal with things, and it's how you interact with your life. That's pretty much it, right?
Yeah. Well, and I think it will now that I'm, just bolusing more and I'm trending up. So let me give myself a little bolus.
Did you not understand years ago that an 8.5 A1C was going to contribute to poor health? Or did you know that?
Actually, I don't know that I'd been told that. I don't remember ever really hearing any of my doctors or educators or anybody harping on or even discussing A1Cs. It's always about food and postprandials and fasting, blood sugars.
So they're reading to you out of a book.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah. This is not coming from some personal experience or some well thought out advice. This is
absolutely not.
Yeah. I learned this in medical school. This is what I'm supposed to say to you. Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Listen, I know it's not crazy. I've been doing this a long time. I know it's almost expected. Jenny and I are literally 6 episodes deep. We're recording another one this afternoon into making a whole series about talking to doctors about what they should be saying to people.
And with being pregnant, a couple things that I had never heard, the doctors had never said, somebody was on one of the podcasts and said at the beginning, the first trimester, your insulin needs go down.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know that. I also did not experience it with the first 3 kids. So no doctors ever said that to me. It did not happen. My 4th, it did happen to the point where I was working and they had to call the paramedics.
So for 3 babies in a row, you didn't have that drop in insulin need first and second trimester, and then it bounced up in the 3rd, but it happened to you on the 4th kid?
Correct.
Wow, that's bonkers. Huh.
And then another thing that I also mentioned to the nurse practitioner, and she's like, oh, she didn't know this, in your 3rd trimester, not even your 3rd trimester, but like the last 6 weeks to a month to 6 weeks of your pregnancy, your insulin needs also go down after drastically going up during the 2nd trimester.
Right.
And into the 3rd.
It ping pongs. Yeah. You have to really stay. And did you have in any of those pregnancies, any of them, in any of your myriad of pregnancies, did you notice your needs jump right up after you delivered the placenta?
No. Well, I will say the recommendation was to change everything by 50%.
Mm-hmm.
So I did that. But with my 2nd and 3rd, well, actually with all of them, I was like, well, I still need to, change things. And then with my 4th, I was like, I'm not going to do quite 50% because I seem to be higher than I wanted to be.
It's interesting.
After the baby.
It's interesting that it was so different for you. Definitely the same father for the 4th one. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
would have nothing to do with it. But I just, wow. Isn't that something? I will say this. You're not going to have any mental health issues around your diabetes because you go with the flow for sure. You really, by the way, that's something we haven't dug into enough. You have 4 children. Yep. You have a job, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have a husband, a job, 4 children. You listen to the podcast. Do you know how many people tell me I don't have time to listen? I'll say to them, like, look, you don't have to be like, you don't have to listen to every episode, but check out this bold beginning stuff or, dive into the pro tip series. I think it'll really help you. And they'll say, I don't have time to do that. And I'm like, what are you, like, running a small country by yourself? Like what? So why do you have time?
I don't know. It became, when I had 2 kids, things were really easy. But, when whatever number of kids you have, you think that's really the hardest thing ever. And then you have more kids and you're like, oh, one less was way easier than this one. So I will say when I had 3 kids, it was definitely hard. Now that I've got 4, he's only 6 weeks. It's about the same as having 3. So what's one more?
You have perspective now that you didn't have before.
But with 2, I was listening to, I would put the kids to bed and then go do the dishes. And I'm the dishwasher. We don't have a dishwasher. So that's when I would listen to podcasts. And then during any commutes, my previous job, I used to travel a lot for work. So I could listen to podcasts and traveling. And now it's every once in a while. So when I take the kids to school, I can sometimes listen, usually not. But then once I drop them off and I'm on my way to work, I can get about 20 minutes in. And same thing when I leave.
The next time you feel your husband's hand sliding under the blanket, I want you to say out loud, not until I get a fucking dishwasher. That's exactly what I want you to say. Okay?
Well, I'm ready for one. I've been fighting with him on this for a couple years.
You don't need to fight. You say
I didn't want one. I'm like, our kitchen's too small. You're not putting a dishwasher in here because he could do it himself. But
no.
Now I'm like, yeah, let's get one.
No, you say it in that setting, you'll have one the next day. That's the first thing I want to tell you. And tell him too. Let me say this. You want a little extra money spent on a Bosch because they're silent. Okay.
Okay.
You don't care where he gets. He better go rob a bank if he doesn't have it, because ain't nobody coming on this side of the bed till I get a silent dishwasher.
I will tell him that.
Anyone listening, I've just given you the best advice you've ever gotten in your entire life. A silent dishwasher is a few $100s more and will change the next decade and a half of your life. You're welcome. There. I've done that. This should be my podcast where I just say things you don't know and they're like 3 minutes long. Can you imagine if you flipped on a podcast and the guy's like, hey, welcome to the podcast. Today's advice, get a silent dishwasher. Goodbye.
You might get more listeners if they figured they could have time to listen.
Yeah, don't worry. I actually already have a series of short episodes in the works we're working on right now. But seriously, that and then hearing like a dish go click, clink, click, clink, click, clink, click, clink for an hour in your house, is you don't realize how much noise pollution is. I can't believe I just used the phrase noise pollution, but it's absolutely true. And there are dishwashers you cannot hear the inside while they're running. I'm telling you, do it.
Well, I have 4 kids, so it might be hard to hear a dishwasher in general.
Those kids are going to leave. And when they're gone, that dishwasher is going to be clanking.
We better not be in this house by the time they leave.
Oh, well, that's another thing you can say when you hear the hand moving. You go, oh, get me a better house. You made the space problem. Fix it. Oh, my God. I don't know what you're doing over there. If you have another baby, I'm going to yell at you. I just want to say that. I don't know you, but I'm going to find you and be like, Johnna, what are you doing?
Well, I do have to go so I can catch my husband on his lunch break so we can try making that next baby.
It's going to happen right now. All right. Well, you obviously have to go feed that baby. But I have one last question. I'll let you go. We're over time because, let's be honest, you couldn't figure out which way was left and right when we were setting things up. Are you named after someone in your family? Like, your name is literally Johnna.
You are correct that I am literally named Johnna. I am not. So here's the story with my name. Nobody in my family is John. They wanted a J name. So both of my parents' names started with a J. My older brother, who was adopted, they named him, his name starts with a J, but he's 5 years older than me, 6 years school-wise, but 6 years school-wise, 5 age-wise. So when he was in school, in kindergarten, when they got me, and they realized there were like 3 other kids with the same name. And they're like, oh, that's too common. We want our daughter to have a J name, but not common. And like Jennifer was really common at the time. And I don't know what else they were considering. And I guess they were asking around and somebody mentioned Johnna and they went with it.
I'm going to tell you 2 things and I'm going to let you go. First thing is, this exact same thing happened to us. We chose Cole. And then when he got to kindergarten, there were like 3 or 4 Coles. And that's how we got to Arden. We did the same thing. It was like, maybe we thought Cole was different, but I guess it isn't. The other thing is, and this is food for thought for you to take through your day. The detail about whether or not your brother, how old he is more than you is completely not important to what you just told me.
I had to throw it in there.
But it doesn't matter. I'm just telling you. I mean, I don't think you're going to change, and I'm not asking you to. You're pretty perfect the way you are, Johnna. Don't change. But no, seriously. But that's what I'm talking about. Like, you dug into a detail with 10 or 12 words that had no impact on the story.
I can't help myself.
I really do love you. I just met you an hour and 6 minutes ago. You're my favorite person. Thank you so much for doing this. Can you hold on for 1 second for me?
Yes.
I want to thank the Eversense CGM for sponsoring this episode of the Juicebox Podcast. Learn more about its implantable sensor, smart transmitter, and terrific mobile application at eversensecgm.com/juicebox. Get the only implantable sensor for long-term wear. Get Eversense. If you're looking for an Omnipod DASH or Omnipod 5, use my link, omnipod.com/juicebox. If you click on the link, I'll say FOMU, FUMU. It doesn't really matter to me. We're making up a word, so call it whatever you want. The Diabetes Variables series from the Juicebox Podcast goes over all the little things that affect your diabetes that you might not think about. From travel and exercise to hydration and even trampolines. Juiceboxpodcast.com. Go up in the menu and click on Diabetes Variables. And don't forget, if you have type 1 diabetes, if you're the parent of someone with type 1 and you're a U.S. resident, I implore you, go help with T1D research by filling out the survey at t1dexchange.org/juicebox. You have to fill it out completely. And when you do, you'll be helping me and people living with type 1 diabetes. Let me say this. It's not going to take you more than like 10 minutes. So the next time you think, I'm going to go take one of those BuzzFeed quiz. You know what I mean? Like a BuzzFeed quiz. Instead of doing that, go fill out the survey at t1dexchange.org/juicebox. You'll be helping out. And then you can take the BuzzFeed quiz. You're just sitting on the toilet anyway. If you or a loved one was just diagnosed with type 1 diabetes and you're looking for some fresh perspective, the Bold Beginnings series from the Juicebox Podcast is a terrific place to start. That series is with myself and Jenny Smith. Jenny is a CDCES, a registered dietitian, and a type 1 for over 35 years. And in the Bold Beginnings series, Jenny and I are going to answer the questions that most people have after a type 1 diabetes diagnosis. The series begins at episode 698 in your podcast player, or you can go to juiceboxpodcast.com and click on Bold Beginnings in the menu. Thank you so much for listening. I'll be back soon with another episode of the Juicebox Podcast. The episode you just heard was professionally edited by Wrong Way Recording, wrongwayrecording.com.